What's up, guys? Phil here with Down for Smiles. We got Josh in the house, about to have a conversation about Down syndrome and aborting it. A couple of things before we get into it. We're going to be talking about God a lot throughout this conversation. And so if you don't like that or if that offends you, then this probably isn't going to be the conversation for you to sit a part of and be a part of. And then also, something I don't want to touch on is the concept of abortion in general. This is about Down syndrome. So with that being said, Josh,
Hello.
how are you, brother?
I am very well today.
Good, man.
Bills are paid and life is grand.
Thanks for making the drive up to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, it's not a bad drive.
No.
Coming here. Yeah. Love seeing the homie.
Yeah. You've been working with me for what, going on a year now, I suppose. Yeah.
Over a year. I think it's getting closer now to like a year and a half, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the year was right around February.
It's a good amount of time. A lot of growth in that time.
Yeah.
A lot of growth.
Speaking on Down syndrome, that was the first photo shoot that brought me to you.
It was.
Ruby's Rainbow.
Yep, in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
How'd you feel about that shoot? Looking back on it, and from everything that you've learned over the year, almost said years. It feels like years.
Well, we've known each other for years.
True.
But
Longer than a decade.
That photo shoot was something that was very, I don't know if I say paramount, but it really changed. Like I had an epiphany that day that I was basically ignorant. Of the Down syndrome community, and I had this standard view of Down syndrome and kids with special needs, that they were not intelligent, couldn't be self-reliant, and just all these other things. And in my own right, didn't think they were less than myself. I just thought that was their kind of personality type. And I went to that photo shoot, and it just completely changed my thoughts in life as far as like how I feel towards not just Down syndrome, but special needs in general. I saw kids and full-grown adults with Down syndrome that were speaking eloquently, intelligently, and going to college and in their own apartments, independent of any support system, and it just completely changed the way I thought. It was very, very mind-blowing.
I agree. Ruby's Rainbow, I've been partnered with her for years, and the things that I've gotten to see in working with her has drastically changed my mind and input or thought process behind Down syndrome. And walking into that same room with you, it's filled with a room full of people that are living lives of success. Mm-hmm. And something that I noted when I walked in there, every time I walk in those rooms, but specifically that party though, was that you could feel a difference in the room. Mm-hmm. Whenever you walk into some rooms or most rooms, as a quote unquote normal person, right?
Yeah.
You can almost feel the sense of judgment coming from others. You can feel a sense of hoping and wanting to belong, and all these things that we normally would feel. And I think that whenever I walked into that room, all you feel is a sense of love and mm-hmm. and acceptance. And it's people that are genuinely just want to live their happiest and best life. It's as if they're not asking for the moon and the stars and the world combined. They just want to be happy and show love to whoever they're around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, touching on that subject, I was telling somebody else, I kind of told you a little bit last night when we were talking about it, that there were two different vibes that I noticed in that entire event. Because when we shot it, the initial part of it was the interviews with the recipients of the scholarship and awards, and then the last part was that dance party. And I was kind of telling you last night, I was reading online at a lot of the comments. Obviously, one of the purposes of us making this video is the viral story, which we don't need to get into too much, but obviously that's going to be part of this conversation. But a lot of people were talking about the difficulties these kids will face, the lack of independence, and just what they're going to face in society and things like that as this reason for abortion. And when I went to this event, there were two different vibes. When they were in the interview process, they were reserved, shelled up, kind of closed off. We had to kind of like push some of, the kids, or I keep saying kids, but the adults, to answer these questions. And it's because they weren't in a room amongst their peers. They know that they're being looked at as different. They're very self-aware of their, who they are and that they're different. It's because when they walk outside, they're always made to feel that way. And so we did the interview portions, and they went to dinner, and then we went to the dance party, and we went to this dance party, and these guys and girls all show up in their best outfits, ready to party. And when they got in there amongst their own peers, all their personalities came out. And I remember we had that one mother that said that her daughter was very reserved, and so they wasn't sure how she was going to be with cameras and whatnot. And even she was out there just dancing up a storm with her mother, because in there they were around their own peers. Nobody was looking at them as different. They felt accepted. Everybody's personalities were shining suddenly, and they were being themselves. You had the guy that's dressed as a cowboy, and every time the cameras got on him, he was just posing and dancing. And there was the girl that wants to be a professional dancer that was just showing all the other ones, her friends, how to dance and all these moves. And it's like that's just, it kind of shows that the difficulties they face, 90+% of that, in my personal opinion, is us, is society. And society notoriously has shown that we don't accept things and people that are different. In the educational system to that, just normal day-to-day society. If we see somebody with Down syndrome or that's autistic and maybe has weird quirks about them, we stare, and they feel that, they notice that just as much as we notice when somebody's staring at us. And it's the same way we feel self-conscious, they feel self-conscious, but everywhere they turn, they're being made to feel self-conscious. So it's hard to get that independence. And we just keep trying to keep society in this little box, and we don't create any ways for people who think differently and operate differently and to be included in that society. And as progressive as America has become, I don't understand why it ends at special needs and Down syndrome, to create an avenue for them to be accepted and to be a part of society. Why shouldn't they be able to go out to HEB or to Walmart and have the same feeling of joy and happiness to be there and showcase, like you said? I mean, it's a vibe being around the Down syndrome community. And we were talking about it before. I'd rather be in a room full of people with Down syndrome than my, normal people, because I know in that room, it's a vibe. We're accepted. Nobody cares about how your hair is or your body shape or any of that kind of stuff that makes us all feel self-conscious when we go to these places, And imagine if they could go to the store and just feel that same kind of love, how much love they would be able to show everybody around them, being accepted. When you see them in the workplace and they're hyped up and they're made to feel as equal as anyone else, they're confident, if more confident than us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I've noticed as well, man. It's sad because it seems like the world has conditioned this demographic, this community to feel as if they're not accepted. And it breaks my heart, because if people just gave the community an opportunity, they would their hearts would be opened up. In the Bible it says, don't allow your heart to be hardened. And I think that God put people with Down syndrome on this earth to soften our hearts. But whenever society has conditioned, the normalcy or the standard for what's normal and what's not. I first of all, I don't even know where you get off thinking that you have the right to even to make that claim.
Right.
To be able to set a standard for others like that's astronomically just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Just in general. But it makes me wonder, like, what's it gonna take for the standard to be removed and people just be accepted. I don't know if we'll ever see it in our lifetime. I pray that we do. I hope that we do. But the way that this is looking and the way it's turning, it's one thing to, again, not to get on the topic, but it's one thing to have an abortion, but it's, for me and the rest of the community, I feel I can speak on behalf of them for just a moment. It's the way that you went about it and did it, and then to say the things that you did, and then he doubled down on it to say that, thank God that my dad didn't abort me, but I'm normal.
Yeah.
It's, I said it the other day. It's as if, like, whenever you're quitting a job and you give a 2 weeks notice, that's for the employer just as much as it is for you, because it leaves an open door for you. But whenever you slam that door and then curse out the owner on the way out the door, there is no door anymore. It's a locked door. You're not coming back in that door. And so I think that's it's one thing to have done it. It's another thing to insult and disrespect and spit in the face of a community that has done literally nothing to you. They've done nothing to deserve the hatred that you are spewing from your mouth.
I mean, you're spewing the same rhetoric that we've talked about before. That's was in Nazi Germany with ethnic cleansing, where
Point the difference out.
The life isn't worth living because of these reasons, and that life isn't And again, he's doubling down by saying these things and that this life isn't worth living and that he's glad his dad didn't abort him, but he's normal. And inserting that, but he's normal. Uh, what's normality? A brick in the wall? You know, is that what we're going to do? Is eugenics? Like we're just looking up and talking about it, where we want to sterilize society until it fits the mold?
And then when does it stop? Are we going to do this with autism? Are we going to do it with ADHD? Are we going
Because
to
they
do it with
face
Tourette's?
difficult life.
Where does it stop?
Well,
And also, why does it stop with just Down syndrome?
yeah. But difficulty in life, I don't know many of us, wealthy or otherwise, that has not had a difficult life or faced difficulties in life. I don't know of many people that are perfect that don't struggle with depression, ADHD, bipolar disorder, clinical depression, where they're chemically imbalanced and will always be depressed and have to take medications. Or if we can diagnose that in the womb, are we going to start aborting that? Like, where do we stop cleansing society of unsavory genetics? And I think it's like you said, God bless this world with Down syndrome and these other conditions. And sometimes maybe it doesn't feel like a blessing. And I don't mean in reference to Down syndrome. I mean birth defects, little things like that. Not only teaches the parents a crazy amount of lessons in life, but it teaches us as humans how to be better humans and better Christians and love each other and love people who are of different demographics than ourselves. And that's across every demographic, even if we don't agree with their lifestyle. God's greatest commandment in his word is love. You know, and I as a Christian, that breaks my heart to see a community being said that they're not worthy of life because of they think differently, they speak a little bit differently. Maybe they're not as advanced in thinking as the most intelligent being, but so can the most intelligent people on earth say about the normal people who don't have high IQs. I guarantee you, a lot of us, if we go step up and take a IQ test, we might not score that high.
It'd be a little humbling experience, wouldn't it?
And is that going to be a cleansing point at that point? If we could test IQs in the womb, is that an abortion reason? I don't get this difficulty in life as an excuse. And I'm not judging parents for their choices in it, but saying that Down syndrome as a community, that they're not worthy of life because they insert these ridiculous reasons and these what ifs here. I've personally experienced the Down syndrome community. When I was in school, in primary school and elementary school, I was put in special classes because of my Tourette's. So I was exposed to the special needs community there, and I never saw what people were saying. I never got exposed to the adult side where I saw these, where they speak intelligently, but that's because our school system sucks, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't approach every child as an individual. We want just standardized testing so the schools can get funding. And then a lot of the kids who are a majority of the kids that think differently get thrown by the wayside. And then we're talking about difficulties. We're the difficulty. Society is the difficulty these kids face and this community face. And why I know their condition is a reason why they don't develop slower, but we're a detriment to that as well. Because imagine if a child with Down syndrome got personalized teaching and one-on-one coaching. We can afford it. Trust me, we can afford it. And imagine if they got that, how well they would develop along with everybody else. And if we just, God forbid, we start teaching every child life lessons in school, finances, bills, budgeting, real life skills that they're going to face. We teach kids all these crazy things that they will never use in life unless they're in a specific career, but we never teach them the basics of life. And if kids, especially with Down syndrome and other special needs, were taught that, and every kid was taught that, we'd be a lot more functional of a society. I saw guys and girls there that were in college with higher degrees than I probably would ever see. And it blows my mind that they're saying that that's not worthy of life. I can't side with that.
I can't either, because I've traveled this country time and time again, been to more states than I can think of, and I've seen. I mean, through my lived experiences, so this isn't even an opinion. Objectively, this is lived experiences that I've seen babies to toddlers to college graduates, Special Olympians, triathletes, movie actors, people that are driving to their own job that they work full time at, living in their own apartments. It's like they're living the same life that you're living. In some cases, a better life than you are living. And it's crazy to me that we, I was talking I went and shot Jaden not long ago in Wyoming, and in speaking with her mother, Janice, she said, don't be the limitations on your child. The parents are typically the worst ones for their children when it comes to Down syndrome, because they want to protect, and she was saying that, 90% of your fears, they never happen, like they just don't, like they don't happen. It's not what God has in place for this person. It's still a person, it's a human being. And the sky is the literal limit, and I've seen it, I've photographed it, I've recorded it, I've captured it. But live in person, I've captured people walking the stage with Down syndrome. I don't even have a college degree.
Hmm. And
So
that's
what are we
against all
talking
odds
about?
as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And what I will say though is, what I do love, just to sprinkle a little positivity in here, what I do love is that there are a tremendous amount of programs and micro communities within the Down syndrome community that are helping. Right? Like, I was just in a meeting yesterday with this gentleman with Happiness is Down syndrome and Team Iron Wheel, and this gentleman's talking about this. There's a whole I don't want to say business, but there's a whole thing of so whenever parents pass, their children are still taken care of. And obviously, as a father of a little girl with Down syndrome, but also a father of a typical learning child, that fear doesn't get any worse or lesser based on who I'm looking at. It's still my child. You know what I mean? Whether it's Weiwei or it's Izzy, it doesn't matter. It's still my child. So it's everything that people, the limitations and the misconceived judgments that they put on somebody with Down syndrome. Just like Miss Janice said, you're probably 90% wrong. And it's sad, because that's where I feel pity for that couple. Is I feel that you were so misinformed, and you didn't truly know what it's like to have a child with Down syndrome. And getting that news, the first thing that they did was run from it, and then create rage bait and clickbait and content like that so they can get more views. Whereas had they gone to Gigi's Playhouse, or pick one, Be Happy, whatever, pick one, and done some of their own due diligence, they could have kept that blessing, and that blessing could have walked the stage one day. It could have been a triathlete. It could have been a Special Olympian. It could have been all these things, or standing in front of congressional members in D.C. Like, I don't know a single person in my world, in my life, that has ever done that.
Oh, and especially even if you want to think of it from a shallow content creator standpoint, I mean, it would have been content gold for them. So, if their motive, and I'm not, I guess, stating their motive, but if their motive was, we're content creators, we can't be content creators with a kid with Down syndrome, then that would be their whole identity. They could have thought about it from there. I mean, I just feel like there were so many angles that they could have approached it. But like you said, unfortunately, society, it wants to put everyone in a box. That's why everyone wants to know your beliefs. Are you conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, and all these things? We want to put everyone in a box so we know whether to reject or to accept. And it's no different with Down syndrome, the Down syndrome community, or any special needs for that matter. Because, you've got people that still think it's cute and funny to make fun of people that are different and that are special needs. And when, again, everyone can look at everyone and probably find something to make fun of them about. There are wealthy people who can look at people who think that they're wealthy and laugh at them about it. There are wealthier people who will look at those wealthy people and laugh at them. There are intelligent people, highly intelligent people, that'll look at people who think they're intelligent and laugh and make fun. There's always a level that we can pick, and lines that we can draw in the sand. And I just feel like, especially as an American society, we're supposed to be progressive. We're supposed to be accepting, and it's part of freedom. Freedom means that you don't walk out in public and feel like you shouldn't be there. You should be able to walk out in public no matter what your belief system is. As long as you're not out victimizing other people, you should be able to walk out in public free and accepted, and not have noses turned down at you because of something you can't even help. A lot of us can help the way we look. We can help the way we talk. We can help our intelligence. We can read books and become smarter. But people with special needs, they can't help how they look. The Down syndrome community can't help how they look, how they speak. They can't fix those limitations. They overcome them, though. And they should be able to walk out into a free society and not have... Imagine you're a teenager with Down syndrome and you see this on the media, and you see people saying your life's not worth living. I can't imagine somebody telling me that my life's not worth living because I have Tourette's or because I'm not from America or any of these other things that maybe makes me different than everyone else. You know, I can't imagine that's what I perceive of myself and my level of acceptance in society. Not only am I made constantly to feel different because I'm special needs, now I'm being told my life's not worth living, and they're actually debating that. That blows my mind that people are debating that whether or not
on
a
worldwide
life with Down
platforms.
on worldwide platforms, that across the spectrum of conservative to liberal are actually debating whether or not a life with Down syndrome is worth living. Why don't you talk to that community first? Because again, where does it stop? Do we start cleansing races? Do we go back to that? Do we take notebooks from the worst of the worst that have existed? Because that's what this is. It's eugenics. We're trying to purify genetics. I mean, look at Iceland, 100% abortion rate on Down syndrome. That is cleansing. Whether it's you call it an ethnicity, an ethnic cleansing or not, that's eugenics. You're trying to purify your genetics based on a diagnosis, based on DNA, because it doesn't have traits that you want. Do we change brown hair? Short, tall? If somebody's short, let's get rid of that. I mean, there's no end to that point because it's just, I guess, it's whoever wants to draw that line. And again, I don't judge the parents. I judge their ignorance. I judge society as a whole that brought that ignorance, that told them that life's not worth living.
You know, I've worked with and been around hundreds of people with Down syndrome, hundreds, and there's always been one commonality in all of them that I've noticed is that not one of them regrets their life. Not one of them feels self-pity. Not one of them hates their condition, hates having Down syndrome. Not one of them looks at another person with Down syndrome and looks at them lesser. In fact, they don't even look at normal society as lesser. It's people say that they want to be good, but when it comes down to be good, they don't want to put the effort into doing it. And the community, the Down syndrome community, they are just naturally good. They're good people, you know? And it's crazy to me that society has come to a point to where good is worth extinguishing. It's worth killing and terminating. I cannot be made to understand it. I cannot.
Especially to accept it, I won't allow it.
No.
Not because of most of those reasons were a bunch of what ifs.
I've seen nothing but victors across its entire country, happy and blessed. You know, like they are fortunate to have Down syndrome. Their words, mine as well, but their words. I don't understand. I don't understand why society thinks that we need to pity them. You don't. You do not need to pity somebody with Down syndrome. There's nothing there to pity.
Just allow the way.
Celebrate it.
Yeah.
I mean, damn, they're the happiest people.
Yeah.
You know, until they're not. I mean, you see my baby Izzy. She can get unhappy real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're filled with joy, and you know, I believe that God put them here to give this cruel and nasty world a bit of joy. You know, I think that they're a walking beam of sunlight on this earth, and people walk around with fire extinguishers and just put them out, and it's like, why? I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine seeing, regardless of whatever diagnoses that you may have or whoever may have or whatever, but seeing on national news and on all social media outlets and all this stuff that, yeah, if it has Down syndrome, you should kill it. I couldn't imagine, or whatever, receding hairline for me, you know what I mean? Like, pick it.
Same.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine seeing that on a worldwide platform. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine.
And it being
I couldn't
debated.
imagine what it must feel like to live in Iceland and then find out that your baby, prenatally, your baby is going to have Down syndrome. And then the pressure that a parent must feel in Iceland to be surrounded by everybody telling you to abort this baby. And in your heart, you don't want to, but you fall to pressure or whatever the case. I couldn't imagine the pressure that a parent must feel there.
It's got to be intense because it's 100%.
It's 100%. It's the entire country is looking at you, for that matter. Anywhere you go, that's how it is. And I think that that's how a lot of parents feel here in America as well, that you're going to be ostracized. And it's, you know, it- if I could say anything of anything of magnitude in this entire conversation, it would be that you're not going to be ostracized. You're not going to, like Miss Janice said, 90% of your fears will never come. It'll never come through fruition. It just won't. It's just not the way that the world works and not the way that the world turns. And truth be told, you're not going to have your kids in places filled with hatred, anyways.
Yeah.
So chances are you're not going to be faced with that.
Well, again, when the parent we talk about the parents, like maybe that mindset where they're considering abortion and things like that, when they get the diagnosis of Down syndrome, they start one of their maybe leading factors that makes them lean into that is, I don't want my child to be bullied nonstop. I don't want my child to grow up and feel always different.
That's going to happen regardless.
But what I'm getting at with that is, but that means that difficulty is us.
Yeah.
It's not the child with Down syndrome.
It's the world.
It's the world around them. And, imagine the amount of just what we would experience as a human race if we stopped approaching every child as these bricks in the wall, where they just all fit in, they all are normal, and we start accepting this bright and vibrant society that we actually have, especially in America, where people can just absolutely be themselves. And even if we think it's weird, you could still be weird, because weird is just a label for things people don't understand. And imagine if we just accepted everyone and accepted kids with Down syndrome, accepted kids with autism and these conditions, and we didn't stare at them and think that they're different. And there were platforms government even ran that pave a way for them to be a part of society. It's not, we shouldn't be thinking about how do we get rid of this? How do we cure this? It's like when people talk about things like autism, how do we cure autism? How do we fix autism? How do we stop it from happening? How about we just stop thinking like that and accept that that child is gifted in a different way and thinks different from us? How will we stop trying to sterilize society to fit in this cone? And it's eugenics. That's what it's borderline. I get disgusted when I hear about, we need to cut this food out and that food out, and vaccines cause autism, and we need to stop that. Why? You ever met a kid with autism you didn't like? You ever met a kid, a full-grown adult with autism or Down syndrome that you didn't like? No. They're always happy because they want to be accepted in society. And when they do feel accepted in society and nobody's like, giving them that dirty, nasty look, they're excited to be there. They'd love to be there. Society would just be so much more beautiful and rainbowic if we stopped trying to sterilize it to fit into this wall.
Something that bothers me the most about this, I think, and not say the most, but it's something that bothers me about this is that just the way that everything else in our society, in at least modern day, happens is something big like this will happen, and it'll stay ablaze for let's say a month or so, and then after that it just goes back to the back burner and it fizzles and it goes away. I hope that, like, I even hate saying this, but I couldn't help but feel it. I In the same way that God sent Jesus to die for our sins, and I'm not saying that this baby was Jesus. I'm not saying that, but I do believe that God uses hardship sometimes for the triumph and for the better,
and death as well.
And I think that as tragic and all the things I could say about this abortion with Jesse and his wife, I think Ashley is her name. It makes me wonder if that was God working. It makes me wonder if, moving forward, that somehow, some way, God's going to put a person with Down syndrome in their life. And it's going to be in one of those situations, like maybe they get married into a family. Now you're with this person forever now until you die. And you get to reflect on that decision. You could have had this life. It makes me wonder if, or think, or whatever, if, this abortion happened to spark these conversations and to bring this community to the forefront where it's always needed to be at in the first place, right there next to everybody else. If it was a calloused act, but a lot of love is to be born from it. That's one thing about the Down syndrome community that I just absolutely adore, is that I've never seen any malicious actions taken from the Down syndrome community. It has always been love from that community, and the Bible says that love always conquers and triumphs, and I think that that's why I'm so emphatically like just I'm an oak tree on the idea that they are the closest to agape love that we'll ever feel, and I think that that's a blessing. And it's sad that one of those angels were taken from us. Um, it makes me happy that I know that baby's up in God.
Yeah.
That does make me happy to know that. I don't know, man. It's hard to rationalize and to think about that could have been another major successor. It could have been,
Yeah.
but maybe in their name, triumph will come from it because of these conversations that are arising. So I guess I say all that to ask this question: what do you think it's going to take for, or what do you think is going to have to happen for society to come together? And I back that up with this thought that when 9/11 happened,
Everybody's unified.
everybody was unified. We were a country for the first time that I've truly remember in my life. We were actually a country. It didn't matter what color you were or what ethnic background or race, creed, type, sexual orientation. It didn't matter. None of that mattered.
It was us against the world.
We
at
all
that point.
bled.
Yeah.
Everybody bled watching those people fall from that tower. And so that's why I bring that up earlier, is that it makes me wonder if this is going to be one of those moments. But again, look at it now, and we got comedians on stage cracking jokes about it, and it's like that. The loss of human life, American life, but human life, I have a hard time finding the humor in that. And
Yeah.
maybe comedy's not for me, you know what I mean, in
Yeah.
that regard. I can understand that too. There's all types of jokes, but
And I think it's also kind of people's coping mechanism a lot of
for
times.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think that? What do you think it's going to take for society to finally accept the community?
It could be this. At least that's my hope, is that it seems like every time a situation comes up, it just polarizes us more and more. And I'm speaking on America, not the world necessarily, but even the world. When these situations pop up, it seems like it separates us more and more and more. My hope is that this brings light to the Down syndrome community, that this baby's death is not in vain. It's kind of like you said, it's almost like a sacrifice, if you will, in a sense, or martyr, that brings awareness to the community. And instead of separating everybody and dividing everybody to get on these convoluted arguments about abortion and pro-life and pro-choice, let's skirt that, because that's always going to be a polarized argument. Let's just talk about this community and let that bring us all together. No matter whether you support abortion or not, we should all be able to rally behind and say, this is a life worth living. This is not a great choice and it's not to demean people. We don't need to come together and beat this couple up and talk down to them, because again, we should blame their ignorance. What does the Bible say? Hate the sin, not the sinner. And so we should be coming together as a nation under this cause and become more aware. If you're not aware, become aware. Do your own research, like everybody always says. Do your own research and stop doing the research you want to see. Do your full research and look into this community, look into the Down syndrome community, and let this unify us as a nation to maybe not only let this bring us together and support this community, say it's a life worth living, but get involved. If you all these difficulties you're talking about is us, and if it's us, let's get involved and come together to fix where we're broken. We don't need to fix Down syndrome. We don't need to fix autism. We need to fix us. Let's fix that. Let's fix the educational system. Get rid of standardized testing. Let's take some of this funding out of politicians, these hundreds of millions of dollars that they get paid, and shift that back into education.
Quite the opposite. They've cut funding for that.
So that because they can't get their stuff together, and I saw a meme where we know where the funding needs to be cut at, not our schools, not our education. There should be, especially for special needs, they don't make a great percentage of our society, right? So there should be teachers there and faculty there, if not even volunteers, because I know plenty of people that would volunteer to help with that, to help give personalized teaching. We should be doing that. We should come together. Let this unify us and progress us and evolve us as a society into something better finally. Why do we have to be divided over every single little issue? And this isn't a little issue. We're talking about lives worth living. So yes, it's a big issue, but why does it have to divide us? Why can't this be like 9/11? 9/11 was a tragedy. Everybody, even the communities, can stand behind it and say it was a tragedy, but it brought us together. That's kind of, at least my feeling, the divine resonance behind tragedy, difficulties, imperfections. cancers and things like that. It teaches us about ourselves. It teaches us about life and the beauty of life and this short window that we all have to live. And we live it so miserably, comparatively speaking, how we could live it if we just modified ourselves as a society and stopped trying to fit everybody in this brick wall in this little box and really tried to be progressive and not let our biases dictate our logic. Where you're saying that a Down syndrome community is not worth living because they insert all these reasons that everybody in life can and likely will experience. But it's different because they have Down syndrome, because there's a condition they can't help that's doing that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't care how imperfect our genetics get or what you feel about that, because the same thing could be said about cancer. That you should sterilize parents who get cancer because that means that their DNA is corrupt, which means they may likely pass that on to their children. A lot of cancer is genetic. So should we start sterilizing those families as well? Should we start aborting that genetic line? Because once we get done with Down syndrome, what's next? Who's next on the chopping block? And would these people feel that same way? And I said, and not to, I don't want to get into an ad hominem or what do they call that? I don't want to distract the argument too much, but would you have the same sentiment if it was based around something like race? Or if we could test sexual orientation in the womb, if it was aborted based on that, would you still have that same sentiment?
Would it be accepted then?
Would it be accepted then? Would you say that life's not worth living? That's a great choice to make? No, you could say that, yeah, it's their choice to make, but you don't have to agree with the choice. People can choose to live dirty. They can choose to not brush their hair, and you don't agree with it. But you don't have to agree with it because it's their choice. You could say that I don't feel comfortable with that. Personally, I don't like that. I would never do that. You could say, I promise you could still be pro-choice and say, I don't think that this is the best choice here. This is a life worth living. This is definitely a life worth living. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can definitely exist at the same time. I promise you it can. We've got to start expanding our mind, expanding our horizons, because we're not humans. We've proven it. We're self-aware. We're sentient. Our brains are bigger than one track. Way much bigger than one track. We as Christians believe we have souls and spirits. There's a complexity to it. There's an understanding and a reason for that intelligence, and we're supposed to apply it to everywhere and not allow our bias to put these blinders on. Because a lot of times that's what people are. They're the horses that have the blinders on the side of their eyes, so they're just hyper-focused on these one things that they believe in, and they refuse to adapt to maybe it's not that I'm wrong, but maybe I don't have it exactly right. Maybe the roadmap's a little off. And I hope that's what this whole situation does is it brings everybody together from both sides of the spectrum on this argument, that we can come together and say this community is a life worth living.
You've been around a good bit of people with Down syndrome. You've been around Izzy for a very long time. From a quote unquote outsider's perspective, what would you tell a mother and father that just received a diagnosis of Down syndrome? What words of wisdom or whatever, what would you tell them?
Your life's about to be so blessed with just unconditional love and a child who's going to always want to do right by you. I've babysat Izzy, and maybe she'll act up, but that's a child of any kind. But when she does act up and she's corrected, she's immediately apologetic and she wants to be better. She wants to be accepted. She wants to be loved. And you're going to experience that as a parent. I know every parent experiences that, but you will especially experience a deep level of it with a child with Down syndrome. It's not going to be a difficult life. There are a lot of support groups out there. There are a lot of those support groups give more understanding more than they do support. Mm-hmm. And education to those parents. And I would encourage at least the parents to be courageous and not, like I forget her name, said to not put your limitations on that child and let those fears be, given to that child. That you're going to experience a great deal of happiness and joy with that child. You're not going to experience those difficulties. And if they come up, every child's going to have a difficulty. Clinical, like, again, go down the list of what most kids are facing nowadays. You got kids that haven't even hit puberty yet killing themselves.
Well, you also got parents out there that are doing were doing medical sex changes and things
Yeah.
like that. How is that normal? That's a whole other conversation on itself. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to go down that road with anybody, but you understand what I'm saying, though. That thought
Yeah.
process. There's no normalcy to that.
I think we need to accept a society that normal should be based around, in those types of situations should be based around, is there a victim involved here?
Mm-hmm.
Is there consent from both parties? Meaning, are both, is everybody in this willing and able to speak on that subject and for themselves? And if there's no victim involved, we should kind of start to mind our own business and live our own lives. And when we do that, we will learn to accept other people, because we realize you're not going to think the same way as I am. You're not going to drive the same way I am. You might drive slower. You might be scared of the road, and that's fine. There's passing lanes for a reason. And it goes across every way of thinking from everything in society. When you're walking through a grocery store, somebody might be walking slower in front of you, and you might think they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they have a condition. Maybe they have a heart condition and have to move very slow to avoid having a heart attack. I mean, there's just so many things that we think to the tip of our nose, and we think that we're just the center of the universe and these main characters. And a lot of times we sacrifice our own humanity in that process. Like, meaning humanity says that every life is worth living. If that heart is beating, that life is worth living, even if there's going to be difficulties involved, because life is always going to be difficulty. It's just how you measure it. It's what list you build every day. I say that all the time, that the difference between a good day and a good life and a bad day and a bad life is what list you make. Are you building a list of what went wrong that day and what's went wrong in your life? Or are you building a list of what's went right in that day and in your life? I've experienced both sides of that coin. And where I was building the bad list of all the stuff of, going through losing my mother and all these difficulties that are surrounded around that. And I built this bad list. I was like, man, my life really sucks. And it got me to the point of suicide. But when I started shifting my focus and started focusing on the reasons I have to be around and these good things, that's the difference. And so difficulty in life, I just don't think should be a measure of life, because if that's the case, we all really, in all due respect, with no better way to say it, we all should off ourselves then.
Mm-hmm.
Because guess what? When you and I leave here, my car could break down. Your car could break down. We could get in a car accident. We could get pulled over. You could stub your toe walking into the grocery store. What's difficult to you? That's not a reason to end a life. Every life that has a beating heart is worth living, is worth growing. In these what ifs, let's stop worrying about what ifs, because let's face it, doctors are wrong more times than they're right on their diagnosis, on their prognosis of the extent of the life left. My mother, when she was diagnosed and went through her cancer, and the doctor said she had X amount of time to live, I don't remember what, it was something around 6 months to a year, because her cancer was hormonal. She still lived a good, I think 2020 to 2023, she lived a good 3 years past that diagnosis. Doctors are wrong more times than they're right on these things. And I don't think that should be a basis of whether or not we allow this life to progress.
I've been saying that recently. We got to stop believing doctors as if they are God.
Yeah.
There's a lot of medical facts that substantiate what they say. There's no argument in that, for sure. But we cannot continue to let doctors, or not even just the medical professionals, but society, dictate what your life is going to be like. You have no idea. You have no idea, like none.
You know what, it gives me an odd comparison, but it's kind of similar in that thinking, is we take doctors' opinions as fact, and because it's based on factual evidentiary things and maybe a history of things that happen. But it's kind of like when you're driving down a road, right? So bear with me, but you're driving down a road and you come up on a curve. There's always that yellow sign that says like 40 miles per hour. But we all know we rip around that turn at 60, 70 plus.
Got places to be.
So those signs are put there as a suggestion based on statistics of the average driver of how quick they can handle that turn without losing control of their vehicle. So if we went by fact, we would never get anywhere. We would just drive slow, creep around these turns, even though we know we can go a lot faster. Meaning, if we stopped listening to doctors as 100% fact, we would have a way more beautiful society, a way bigger, better society. We would experience life at a faster pace, intense level than we would otherwise. But staying in this one lane because a doctor said this and because of our bias, that's a boring life to me. There's a lot more love and life and luster out there that if we stop trying to put everything in a box, man, come out of that box. Think outside the box, like they say. Get rid of your bias. Take those blinders off. Maybe think about finding a middle ground with other people. If you're liberal and you're conservative, maybe think about how to make that common ground. And that's at least my belief in Christianity of what it preaches is unity. And God's greatest commandment was love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's slow to anger. It doesn't boast. It's not envy. It doesn't keep a list of wrongs. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's what the Bible says to me love is. And so whether you're liberal or conservative, or it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, I feel like we can come into common ground on this and say that these lives are worth living and not base it around difficulties or what ifs. There's a lot of what ifs a doctor can throw in your face.
So whenever we got the news of Down syndrome, they also gave us pamphlets. I know that they have to inform you. I say they have to. I mean, I don't know if they even. I don't know. I guess to be truthful, I don't know. What do you think the best practice of informing parents of termination is?
I think they need information on both spectrums because I think education is always important, even if it's something you don't necessarily want to hear about. But when you're giving them only pamphlets on abortion and termination, you're kind of coercing.
There's no other choice.
Yeah, you're coercing, and these are your options. Wink, wink. You should do this, and it's kind of like when we interviewed. I forget his name over at Be Happy. How they said that there's an agency here that will take your child. And this is what broke my heart here. And they told these parents so that you can live the life you're supposed to live. Maybe I'm wrong as a Christian in believing that God blesses every child to those parents for a reason, even if it's a short, just heartbreaking reason. But God blessed that family with that child. And to tell them that so that you can go back and live the life what life am I supposed to live exactly? Normal?
Tell me. You know me so well. Tell me. For you to say that, you must know my life and what it's destined to be.
What normal life I'm supposed to lead, doctor? What do you mean by that? What's a normal life? To have a child that is perfect somehow? Because what if it's not Down syndrome? What if it's clinical depression? What if it's ADHD? What if it's autism? Are you going to give me the same kind of pamphlets? I don't think so. And it's like, it just breaks my heart to hear that, to live the life you're supposed to live, this normal life. Who wants to live a normal life? It's boring. We have such a short window of being here compared to how long existence is, that living a normal life should not be what we seek out. We should want to seek out difficulties. We should want to,
stop the boundaries.
Yeah, stop seeking out a paycheck.
This world beautiful in saturation.
Yeah, go explore the woods somewhere. Stop, trying to go into these careers that are boring and mind-numbing, and do something you love. I stepped out of a paycheck to go into a career where I didn't know when the pay was coming, and I don't have any regrets in it. Quite the opposite. I've experienced a level of life, and I've been involved in things and in rooms that I would have never dreamed of. And if you told me that would happen one day, which you did in the beginning, I didn't believe you. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to be in the midst of people like Greg Abbott, the co-founder of Home Depot, shooting Formula One at the Dakotas, being paid to be there for Hot Wheels of all things. I grew up on Hot Wheels. I was geeked out on that one. And, and shooting for things like Apple, running the entire city of Austin just about for them. And I would have never believed for a second that I would be doing that in this career. And I think people need to stop worrying about normality and living a normal life. And I think that will help pull us away from, when we talk about a situation like that, we don't try to find a way to cope and agree with it because we support abortion. Again, you can support abortion, but not support that decision.
Mm-hmm.
You also don't need to attack those parents, especially as Christians. I know we want to so bad, but hate the sin, not the sinner. Their choices were based around ignorance. Let's face it, it was based around ignorance, ignorance of the facts, ignorance of what they could have had with that child. And because like you said, the doctors didn't approach him saying there's also all these support groups, there's also all these programs that can take care of your child's entire college tuition and really support you through this process if you decide to carry through with the pregnancy. If they did, they may have made a different decision. There's a lot of parents out there that might make different decisions. Look at the comments that are being positive, that showcase their own children.
That's something that I've noticed, man, is that like in the comment section under a lot of this content that's being pushed out, even through TMZ, like all these, from small creators to world-renowned ones, the comment section is it seems the majority is like, you made a mistake. You should not have done this, and um, I don't know. I can't help but go back to the thought of it's sometimes it's not what you said, it's how you said it, and it's not what you do, but it's what you say. And I think that that's significantly one of them. I agree 1,000%. I mean, I believe that God gives us a tremendous amount of grace because when we fall short every single day,
Yeah.
we are imperfect beings and souls. Like
Yeah.
we just are. We were born into sin, and so trying to live a life similar to that of God or Jesus rather, there is a calling that to forgive these people, for what they're doing, not even what they've done, what they're doing, because I mean they're doubling, tripling down on what they've said and continue to do it. So I fully understand why the community is, enraged right now with everything that's happening with them.
Their feelings are valid, though, for sure.
100% valid, 1,000% valid. But I do agree with you, though. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Um, I don't know. It makes me wonder: is there going to come a point in their lives that they're going to reflect on this heavily and feel like a sense of regret, for everything that's taken place? And I wonder if they'll be as public about that sense of regret
won't.
and humility
Yeah.
as they were with the slurs and the degradation of, I guess, verbal degradation of a community.
To be honest with you, I think part of me believes and thinks that they've already experienced that guilt. I think that that's why they're doubling and triple down, is it's kind of a compensation, not just to their community, because obviously they're YouTubers, they're content creators. They put this whole thing out for people to view, see, and judge. And I think that's why they're also kind of doubling and tripling down, is because they do feel that guilt, and now they need to not only do this for their community,
Validate
but for
themselves.
themselves. They want to validate within themselves this reason why, and try to continue on that way of thinking, even though I know as a human deep down they know that that was not the right decision to make, especially post that, because I guarantee he probably did sit down and do his research. And so did the mother. I guarantee, especially the mother. I don't care who you are, unless you're just a total sociopath. I guarantee you, her mother instinct is still kicking in a little bit, and it's probably making her feel a pretty heavy amount of guilt. And I bet you she's already felt that, and which is again why, one, I see him speaking more than her, and two, I truly think that this is just an overcompensation for the guilt that they're feeling.
I wonder if they'll turn, because they have, what, 4.5 million followers or something. I mean, it's an astronomical number across platforms, astronomical number. It makes me wonder if God's going to take their story and then make them or turn them, whatever, into advocates. If they'll allow their hearts to be softened, if they'll turn their platforms into an advocacy.
I mean, imagine what that could do if they suddenly did come out. Not say that necessarily that they were wrong in a sense, that they're evil people or anything, but to come out and admit that that decision was wrong and that they maybe should have carried that life and become advocates for not necessarily aborting, to consider carrying the pregnancy through and facing those difficulties. And then maybe that can be a catalyst to us as a society to alleviate those difficulties, to stop looking at people differently and any differently than you and I look at each other. I guarantee you'll see those difficulties fade out. We'll see a lot more flourishing of a society. You'll see people with Down syndrome and autism. I've met people with autism that outdo me in technology and just their understanding of things. And if they imagine if that was harnessed, if we just learned how to teach them the way they think and the way they learn. And same thing with kids with Down syndrome. I hope and pray that this turns them into advocates for Down syndrome.
I asked you earlier, what would you tell new parents, prenatally or otherwise, but new parents with a diagnosis of Down syndrome? In your experience in working with me, what would you tell a person with Down syndrome?
They're no different than you and I. In thinking differently doesn't make you different in a bad way. Being different's good. Being an individual is great. We should all embrace that in society.
Your eyes lit up when you started talking about this.
Yeah.
The look in your eyes changed drastically from that of anger, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
no,
but
you're
from
fine.
that of anger, you can feel the emotion in your eyes. Tell me about what you would say to somebody with Down syndrome, and immediately your entire posturing, the look in your eyes changed.
I think every child should be taught to embrace their differences, and if they're taught to embrace their own differences as something that's worthy to showcase to the world, they will embrace other children's differences and allow that to be showcased to the world. A lot of the reasons why children don't accept different children and learn ignorance and things like racism.
Starts at home.
It starts at home. It starts because they're taught to not like that. They're taught to shell up those differences. When their child does something weird, they're like, don't do that. People will think you're weird. You want to be accepted in society. If we stop doing that as parents and we teach a kid, if you see a child with Down syndrome and it's my child, I'm going to teach them to embrace their differences, embrace their uniqueness. I watch my brother with his kids. They're wonderful kids. And they're very unique and different, if you will. They dress differently because they dress how they want to dress. Like that movie Big Daddy with I think that's the name of it, with what's his name, the actor?
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler. Embracing those differences, even though everyone around you is going, you shouldn't let your child dress like that and wear those.
Pee your pants.
That's
what society should do.
Yes.
That's a great example. You're only cool if you pee your pants.
Go for it. Be different.
And then everybody wanted to have,
Like there's a YouTuber out there, I don't know his name, and he's a kind of a niche content creator, but he does this thing where he walks out into like this busy road or where there's a lot of foot traffic and he just lays down on his back. He doesn't say anything. He's obviously got his camera on him, but he just lays on his back, and while people are like getting frustrated with them, and his whole purpose in that is that people are so scared to be anything other than normal that's why we forget to walk when somebody's looking at us. We forget how to walk, and we start doing weird things because we're being watched now, and we don't want. How do I move now? I don't want you to look at me differently.
Mm-hmm.
That starts in childhood and adolescence. We should be embracing those differences. When you see it, hype your child up for their differences. Instead of turning it something to be embarrassed of and feel different about, hype them up. If your child has Down syndrome, hype them up about it. You're special in a way that means something, meaning you're unique in a way that should be proud of. You should be excited to showcase that. You've got something that can change hearts. Stop teaching kids to be normal. That's boring. Allow your kids to dress they want to dress. Get rid of, I know we got to not let kids dress like adults in school, but get rid of these dress codes that change colors and don't allow kids to fully express themselves in school. Allow them to express themselves. Use our intelligence as human beings and adults, obviously, to know where those limits should be, but you shouldn't be making a child feel differently because they are. You should have them embrace that difference because everybody's different. I guarantee you, every single person that watches this video or just in society as a whole probably has weird quirks at home that they let loose when no one else is around.
Yep.
Everybody does it. Everybody picks their nose when no one's looking.
Yeah.
And imagine instead of ooh when somebody does, yeah, it's gross, of course, but and it's a gross analogy, but it's the same concept. We all do it, but we're all made to feel like just evil human beings when we do it. And if we just start teaching kids that those differences shouldn't be hidden, they should be explored and showcased. That's something I think wonderful to not only, but that would change society in the future. Because again, if you teach a child to accept their own differences and to showcase the world, they're going to see that way with other kids. They're going to see that that should be celebrated and showcased, not pushed aside and hidden.
Yeah.